Okay. This presentation is going to be presented with my colleague, Tom. Tom, I think you can start.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to present today. My name is Tom Brady, and I work in the Office of Prior Learning Assessment at the State University of New York, Empire State University. I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Renata Kochut, who's in the School of Business, and we will be presenting from the view of the Prior Learning Office as well as the business faculty. Just to let you know a little background, Empire State College serves non-traditional students, generally adult students who are not in the traditional age group of college students. So these students are coming in with prior work experience or other experiences that they are looking to have evaluated through the prior learning assessment process. So today we're going to focus on the business school prior learning assessment, but this is true for other areas as well. So our title is enhancing, thank you, the iCPL process. iCPL refers to individualized credit for prior learning, the process in the business education through advisors support. Thank you, Renata. As I said, iCPL stands for Individualized Credit for Prior Learning. This is a sort of a universal title for this process. It's also known as Prior Learning Assessment. And this is a process by which our university, as well as many others, evaluate a student's knowledge in terms of looking for possible college level learning through their experiences which they receive outside the traditional college classroom, such as the workplace training, personal research, or special interests. And the role of iCPL is in bridging the gap between the student's practical knowledge and academic achievement. Another?
So why iCPL in business education? Why is it important? So we found that practical on-the-job experience plays a crucial role in business education because it bridges, as Tom mentioned, it bridges the gap between theoretical concepts and real-world application. And in areas like management, marketing, finance, or human resources, for example, students who have practical experience are better equipped to understand how academic theories work in real-world environments. And practical experience not only helps in understanding business concepts, but also fosters critical thinking, problem solving, and adaptability, which are the skills essential for success in the business world. We found also that acknowledging work experience and prior learning in business education offers significant benefits, especially for adult learners and professionals. It accelerates completion by saving time and reducing redundancy, while also lowering tuition for students. This recognition of professional expertise not only validates experience, but also enhances credibility, supports career advancement, and provides broader opportunities for students. If we acknowledge students' existing knowledge, we can create more relevant learning paths and foster increased engagement and retention for students. Additionally, it encourages lifelong learning, allowing for the practical application of new knowledge and bridging the gap between theory and practice. And what's the most important, it increases access to higher education, especially for non-traditional and underrepresented learners.
So what students are eligible to pursue iCPL? Well, first of all, they need to be enrolled at the university full-time or part-time, but have to be enrolled registered students who have a degree plan. In other words, we need to know where the credit for prior learning would fit into their degree plan. We have to look at their prior learning and judge whether it's college level learning and that it is not redundant with any other certificates or trainings or transcript credits they may have. Examples of experience that could qualify for iCPL assessment are obviously work experience, any licenses or certifications they may have, continuing professional education, even volunteer work if it's considered college level learning. Other areas are independent study. It doesn't have to be formal, but something the students study on their own. And of course, military training and any creative work. For example, may be in the arts or music, as long as it's considered college level. So there's a step-by-step process we use at Suny Empire State University and specifically in the School of Business. The first thing is for the student and their professional advisor or their faculty advisor to identify their college level learning. And then the student describes that learning through writing essays in which they describe what they know about a certain subject. They submit those requests through something called PLA Planner, which the university uses, which is online and tied to our university website. The request is reviewed by my office and assigned to a professional or faculty evaluator who is a expert in the field. That evaluator does an assessment and submits a credit recommendation. And then there's an academic review committee made up of faculty members who review and approve the credit recommendation.
So our research is about, how to support advisors. And so the question is what advisors are doing and how they are helping students. So first is brainstorming ideas. So advisors are helping students identify relevant learning from their work experience. And it is not easy task. For example, I am professor of economics and I teach economics, but also I advise, I mentor students. So through the conversation with student and analyzing students' resume, I have to assess if the student has sufficient knowledge to earn college level credits in management, business, or marketing, areas that I am not that familiar with. So this is the first step to help students, find whether they have an college level credit, whether they can start writing essay, whether there is any reason for them to, to work on the essay. And this can include asking students to think about, leadership roles, project management, or some special skills that they gain in the workplace. Advisors also provide specific actionable feedback that helps students strengthen weak areas, improve clarity, and ensure their submissions are aligned with assessment rubrics. This may include recommending some improvements in writing style or suggesting stronger examples of experiential learning. We can also provide or develop templates or rubrics for iCPL essays to guide students in structuring their learning descriptions and ensuring that the alignment with academic standards, learning outcomes, and university policies. We require students to write this essay in a very particular way, and we want them to show the knowledge rather than the job experience. So advisors also would help connect these prior skills or knowledge to academic criteria, ensuring the clear and logical flow of ideas. We also assist students in breaking the iCPL process into smaller, manageable steps and setting deadlines for each stage of essay development and evaluation process, working with time management and helping students this way. And finally, advisors guide students through reflective exercises that prompt them from students to think critically about how their experiences have shaped their learning. This can include asking students to consider challenges they faced in their work or how they overcame those challenges and how these experiences align with academic knowledge.
So there are also challenges and limitations for advisors in this process, obviously. First of all, we try to balance the advisor's guidance with the student's independence. At Suny Empire State, we encourage students to develop their own degree plans towards whatever major they're pursuing. So we have to balance that advisement with their independence. It's a time-sensitive process. iCPL is not a quick process. It could take several months from submission to the student receiving that credit. And then it's not easy to match a student's particular learning to the academic requirements of their degree plan. Question is, are the students prepared and do they understand the process and the time limitations? So these are some of the issues.
Also, as advisors, we often have difficulty in recognizing and articulating how the learners, and also this is for students very challenging. So recognizing and articulating how a learner's professional or personal experience translates into college level academic credits, because it must be college level. Many adult learners have extensive practical experience, but translating that into theoretical frameworks or learning outcomes required by academic institutions can be very complex. Another significant challenge that we face is staying current with industry trends and maintaining up-to-date knowledge of the diverse and rapidly evolving professional fields. So we must continue educate ourselves on industry standards, certifications, and emerging technologies to accurately assess and align learners' professional experience with academic content. Another problem is subjectivity. Subjectivity in evaluation, basically of the fairness of consistency and fairness of assessment of student experiences. Since professional and personal experiences can be diverse and unique, it can be difficult to apply standardized criteria when determining their academic equivalency. Advisors may struggle to ensure that evaluations are objective because what constitutes level learning, college level learning can be also open for interpretation. And finally, managing diverse student needs. It's one more significant challenge. It requires adapting support strategies to accommodate students with varying background, skills, and professional experiences. So we found that adult learners often come from a wide range of industries, educational levels, and life situations, which means advisors must adjust their guidance to meet individual learning goals and competencies. So now what are the solutions, what we found is useful? We found that to enhance the iCPL process in business education, it is essential to provide targeted support for both students and advisors. First, we should offer ongoing training for advisors. This training will help advisors stay up to date on CPL-based practices, industry trends, and technology innovations. Also, the development of online tools, videos, and workshops, especially designed for students entering the process, is very crucial. These resources will help improve the quality of student submissions by offering clear guidance and how to document and present prior learning for credit. We should also develop resources like tutorials, frequently asked questions, templates, and guides. Because by making these available through the process, students will have the support they need at every step, which will reduce confusion and improve student submission accuracy. And finally, a centralized iCPL resource hub is a game changer. This hub, acting as one-stop portal, provides access to all relevant materials, guidelines, sample learning descriptions, and frequently asked questions. It also empowers students to access the information by themselves and help advisors.
In addition, it's important to enhance communication between the advisors and the students to streamline this process. Often students will have issues either in connecting with advisors or understanding what the advisor is asking them to do around the process. So this is important. There are some standardized evaluation rubrics that can help students and, let's say, new advisors understand the process that we use in evaluating prior learning. And we can tailor advising strategies. So advisors, whether professionals or faculty, can have professional development that focuses on advising diverse student populations, students who have different educational backgrounds.
Are we done with our time?
How are we doing,
Yeah.
Sunil?
So
We have
good?
Okay. Last thing that we wanted to say. So this is something new that we are doing, and we this is very exciting because we found that, you know, like the most recent innovations that are enhancing the process are AI tools that are very helpful for advisors, and we don't let students use them yet, but you know, advisors are encouraged, and we are experimenting with this. So AI, you know, an AI that, you know, we can scan students' resumes or personal stories or history, and this would help us identify college level learning that occurred. We can also ask AI to help us with a feedback. We can ask, you know, use AI to suggest how these experiences align with academic competencies and degree requirements. We can, you know, use it to assess the level of learning, whether it's introductory or advanced, a number of credits, and whether the learning is liberal arts or applied learning. And also, you know, AI can help us find potential gaps between, you know, students' learning and the degree requirements. But as I mentioned, this is we are testing this, and of course, you know, human who is very well trained is needed. We don't only use AI, but it is very useful, for example, for me, who is teaching economics, asking, you know, AI, help me find learning in this resume if somebody is doing marketing or management. So these are the strategies that we use, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
yeah, if
Do we
there's any
have time
quick
for a question?
Because we already passed the time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Tom
Thank you
and
very
Renata.
much.
And our next presentation is by Todd Holding. He's presenting about the pedagogy of non-inertia frame effect on tidal pause and atmospheric dynamics.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just sharing it. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I assume we're good.
Yeah, good.
Okay. So yes, I'm talking about non-inertial frames and how we sometimes use it against our better judgment almost, but also it ends up bringing a lot. to the classroom. So my collaborators are Suny and Tak Chung, and I thank them for all their hard work. Okay, so to introduce this, there are some ideas. A lot of ideas are fairly complex, but also really motivating for students. So some examples would be hurricanes, it's in the news, galactical tidal effects, or even tidal effects on Earth, orbital mechanics for spaceflight, atmospheric dynamics, atmospheric simulations. And these sort of things, they all involve rather complex math that can be greatly simplified if you go into what we call a non-inertial frame, meaning a frame of reference that is rotating. So in such a frame, you're not aware of the rotation, but you get strange, fictitious forces. And I guess the biggest one is, for example, if you're on a merry-go-round, you feel like you're being pushed towards the outside of that merry-go-round. Although what's really happening is you're having to constantly pull yourself in just to stay on that rotating platform. All right. Without a fundamental understanding of how rotation affects the rotating observer, the student could be, usually we do this as a student research project, and the idea is you want to learn some physics. You want to learn how it's going. You don't just want to be pushing buttons and hoping for something interesting to pop out at you, which also could be dangerous. You push the wrong button and you get the wrong answer. If you believe it, you're in trouble. So we think that developing a pedagogy of non-inertial reference frames for conceptual physics as well as science-based physics and astronomy courses can lead to a lot of enrichment in our courses. All right. To pop us in, a lot of times this is the sort of thing where we will use a video clip, and here I've got a couple 3-minute video clip and a 6-minute video clip talking about what essentially is non-inertial frames. So on the left, we're talking about the weather, probably things you've heard about a lot, and an explanation of how Coriolis effect causes weather patterns, causes, for example, hurricanes to come up along the equator and smash into Florida. And the video on the right was a fun little thing about, well, do toilets really flush the wrong way or the opposite way in Australia compared to the Northern Hemisphere? And these are fun topics that tend to engage the students, but also involve these non-inertial reference frames that we've come to avoid, like the plague in our basic physics mechanics, but they keep showing up in all kinds of places, including where our students want to be. And so we think it's time to bring them in. I have to start my timer. All right. Okay, so on the one hand, this is what I've been talking about, regular knowledge transference usually would entail reduction of calculus or algebra. So usually we're simplifying the equations to simplify the math and get the students into something they're interested in and relieve them of some of that cognitive load. Meaning, if you're trying to master 3 ideas at once, you're going to have a really hard time. If we can relieve you of 1 or 2 ideas temporarily and focus on just one, that's going to help you a lot in learning that one idea. On the other hand, as I've been mentioning, going into one of these non-inertial, say a rotating reference frame, although We do it all the time. We're on Earth. Earth is rotating. We pretend it's not. Once you do that, once you pretend it's not, you have to at times introduce what we call pseudo forces, be it the centrifugal force or the Coriolis force. And these forces, since they're not real, they don't obey, for example, Newton's third law, which says there's always two forces. If there's a force, there's always two things pulling on each other. Because these fictitious forces are a result of just being, say, in a spinning reference frame. There is no, the spin itself would be the second thing. You can't really pull against a spin. Yeah. Okay, so such an apparent contradiction has to be eradicated. So we want to use these fictitious forces in this concept, but we really need to be careful about cluing the students in that there's a more sophisticated way of thinking about this. Okay. In addition, science demands a conceptual foundation of reference frame. So these extra terms in the math, in the equations, which is how it was taught 70 years ago, shouldn't be treated as like fudge factors. It's just things we put there without understanding. We should treat them as physical ideas that are being accommodated temporarily. In comparison, okay, so we've got a couple of physics examples that are not exactly in this frame, but very famously, when we talk about musical instruments and we talk about tubes and their resonating factor, we say a tube, its open end is at atmospheric pressure, but it's not quite exactly where the opening is. It's a little bit outside of that because you still see the opening until you move away from it a bit. That we always teach as kind of a fudge factor. And the reason being, the math is very high-level math. Lord Rayleigh, Nobel Prize winner in physics, was the first, one of the first to do it well experimentally. And another Nobel Prize winner 50 years later, Schwinger, finally worked it out. But the level of math and science required is way beyond anything an undergraduate student would typically do. So there we do use the fudge factor and we do a few hand-waving arguments. Another contrast, though, when we talk about pendulums, or more specifically, we talk about springs oscillating up and down, so spring vibrating. We talk about a correction because a spring has a mass, and you don't just talk about the mass that the spring is holding, but the mass of the spring itself. And that can easily be derived with not too much math. Okay. So we're going to be somewhere in between. Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit and take you to an example. So here we have an example. We have a YouTube video, and what it is it's a video explaining how scientists now model protein and other biological molecules. So this is really interesting because it gets to, oh, I've got an enzyme in my body and how that enzyme is regulated, how it affects my energy level, or how it makes me sick, or if it's a virus or something like that. So we have a video here. It's a rather long one, 15 minutes, but it's nicely animated. And they talk about how Newton's laws can be used to predict exactly what this molecule is doing, and towards the end of the video, how it performs in the body. So the idea is this is a real application of Newton's laws. And yes, the computer is doing it for you, but it really can help you. And as you watch the video, you can use the video itself analyze how things are moving and get an idea of the forces at work. So it kind of gets the students into applying these laws in something that's rather sophisticated and seems like it has real world and even futuristic applications. On the other hand, although they apply Newton's laws correctly, their physics on the forces is a little weak. And this is another place where we can step in and talk about, well, the true nature of these forces. So they talk about electric dipole Coulomb force, and they talk about van der Waals forces, and they talk about chemical bonds, but their treatment is rather weak, and it also leads to something we can talk about, because both what they call the dipole Coulomb force and the van der Waals force, these are both Coulomb forces, subject to what's called Coulomb's law, basic interaction. Like charges repel and like charges attract. So we want to add in some of that physics. At first, we want to ignore it so that we can get into Newton's laws and how once you have the forces, you can just act on it. But then we want to go back and later in the course, talk about these forces, how they arise, and their true nature. And having such an example really gives you the chance to say, oh, this is what we're doing well, this is why it's interesting, and this is where we had to cheat a little bit. Also, it gets the students really ready if they're going, say, an engineering type track to that stage where, yes, at times we have to use what we call empirical models, models that we just know work. And we don't usually think about exactly why they work, but sometimes you have to, and it's always good to be able to switch. Okay. All right, so these, I'm going to move on and talk about Coriolis effect, which if a student, even a student in one of our conceptual courses where we avoid most math entirely, or astronomy where I tend to avoid all math beyond add, subtract, multiply, and divide. This is a high-level concept, but the students are really interested in weather patterns and how this affects why the Milky Way galaxy looks like a spiral with a bar in the middle. So we want to be able to do these, and part of the way to get them there is to just not use a full-on physics approach, but to rather just tell them, oh, this is how it works, and then this is how we look at it. So we call this, sometimes we've coined the term context-first pedagogy. So we're looking at something that's interesting, and then within that context, we start branching out on how to improve the student learning. Oh. Okay. I'll come back to that in a moment. Here, I actually did this out of order, so I will come back to the other slide. So if you're talking about global circulation, how currents flow, and you might want to see that, how currents sink, they rise up, they go in swirls in the ocean. Well, that's very interesting. And it helps to start off with a Coriolis effect to help the storytelling. And we have here a phenomenon-based model. And if you want, you can go a little further. Okay. All right, so we can talk about phenomenology sort of get the students started and then come back and talk about, oh, what gives rise to these effects and why they really happen. So the student gets the idea in their head, and then they just need to focus on understanding it rather than kind of doing everything at once. All right, let me go back to a more understandable situation, the case of tides. So tidal force projects, we have several of these projects, as well as using it to teach our astronomy students. And one of the ideas of tides is, well, here we have an object that's being affected by gravity. And because part of the object is closer to whatever's pulling on it, it gets pulled extra hard. And that pulls it in this area to elongate it. And the side that's away gets pulled a little less hard, and therefore it ends up being further away from the second object. And then we go on to tidal braking. And we talk about, well, okay, once it's elongated, if that object is also rotating fast, it will pull that elongation ahead a little bit. And for some reason, we have the moon in this particular video, pulling that back. And that leads to something called tidal braking. But also because this object that's here pulling on the moon has tides, so I guess this is the Earth. Part of it pulls the moon towards it, but because this part is leading, as the moon gets pulled back, part of it gets being pulled forward. So in this video, the students would be introduced to both the concept of tides, but also nicely to this less well understood idea that the tidal bulges on Earth actually help to pull the moon forward, which causes the moon to slowly get to larger and larger orbits. And that will happen until the Earth's rotation slows down so much that it only rotates once every 30 years. And that would take tens of billions of years to happen. So our moon is very slowly receding away from the Earth because of this. And these are very interesting phenomena. Both the tidal braking, the reason that the moon's same face of the moon always faces the Earth, that the Earth's rotation rate is slowing down because of tidal braking, and that the moon is getting to a larger orbit. So these are all really interesting. To understand them, it helps to go into a non-inertial reference frame, among other things. And then we can focus on the physics of what's going on. And I think I'm about out of time. This is a quick derivation of Coriolis acceleration for our algebra and calculus-based physicists. And this is a closed test. We've left one of the steps blank, and to sort of both test whether the students are following along and also to encourage them to follow along, we ask them to fill in blanks. And it's, well, it sometimes works well. Okay, so some of our results. Okay, last two slides. Okay, some of these things work well, others don't work well. It depends on the student population, but it also depends on how motivated the students are into looking at these various examples. Okay, so some of our recommendations after doing this research and trying it out. Tidal force and Coriolis effect should be included in algebra and calculus courses. And I avoided this for decades, but these fictitious forces actually have a place in simplifying these more complex situations. And by examining them, you can really get into a lot of the details about when you should and when you shouldn't do these. Closed tests are good for not just understanding reading comprehension, but also to see how good students are at algebraic or physical derivations. Okay, some of these phenomenological ideas can be used to help with conceptual physics as well. And this context-first pedagogy could help those students who are failing in a simple model-based pedagogy where you start with the equations first. All right, I'll leave it at that. If there's time, I would be happy to take any questions.